I'm Anna Fox, and we're at University for the Creative Arts, which is a big south of England art school with 4 campuses. We're actually at the Farnham campus. So I'm Professor of Photography here at UCA, but I'm also a photographer and have been since about 1983, a long time. Fast Forward Women in Photography, which I direct, was started in 2014 by myself and Professor Karen Noor, who's another fantastic photographer who works here at UCA. It was supported by our then head of school, Sarah Jeans, who brought on Maria Kapaiva, who still works with me as the project manager. So we started it because we were noticing that some of our classrooms had up to 100% women in them. And yet we were not so often seeing this translated into the outside world. We were looking specifically at the art marketplace and the field of art, but actually the commercial world is there are even less women involved as photographers. So we thought that we need to make a change, and that's what Fast Forward was set up to do. So there are really key things for women in UK society that makes it difficult, and one is it is predominantly women who get the caring duties in life, and that's not just for children, it might be for older relatives, friends or siblings. You can get behind in a career like photography. You've got to be on the ball with photography, you've got to be there, you're usually freelance. And certainly if you were doing commercial photography, you had to be ready to drop everything. So it's one of the decisions I made early on, is that I'm not going to be doing commercial photography. I had children quite quickly after leaving university, and I was a single parent with them for years, for 10 years. And so I didn't even think of going into the commercial world of photography because I just knew it wasn't feasible. A lot of publishers and people creating exhibitions kind of almost thought of women's work as second rate somehow. I mean, I have evidence of key shows, like there was a huge exhibition about the history of photography at the Royal Academy. I think it was about 1989, something like that. And there were 100 photographers in there, and there were only between 2 and 4 women only. That's massive. There was a big show at MoMA in New York called Thatcher's Britain. There were no women in that show. And certainly my own work and Karen Noor's work was about Thatcher's Britain, and we weren't in that show. And then there were others. Tate Modern didn't do their first photography show till about, curated photography show till about 2004. And I think it was 24 photographers and between 4 and 6 women. That's really poor representation. So basically at Fast Forward, what we're doing is organising events and activities, conferences, workshops, research workshops as well as practical workshops, and mentorship activity that allow us to sort of help to train women, but also investigate some of the reasons that women have been, if you like, left behind to some extent. Putting ourselves in the picture came about because we have always been interested in enabling women to tell their stories. We'd been involved in some British Council funded mentorship projects in China and in West Africa. And so we knew that there were things that needed to be done for women, and particularly perhaps women who were fairly new to using photography. The beginning of a project is always creating the network and the partnerships. So that's a sort of big discussion, which can be very complicated, but we chose really great partners to work with who have lots of experience. Basically, each partner ran the project how they wanted to. It wasn't us saying this is what you must do. What we decided a sort of big overall structure, which is that there would be workshops and there would be mentorship following it. And then the final stage of the project was actually taking part in the Work, Show, Grow online art school, which is a kind of building your confidence kind of school, I would call it, and doing external projects that are very interesting. And I think the book, which will hold a lot of their work, is not only a legacy for the project, but it's something to be really proud of for each of the individuals. So there were 3 groups of migrant and refugee women selected by the organisations who they were going to work with. So Impressions Gallery in Bradford, National Galleries of Scotland in Scotland, and Autograph in collaboration with Women for Refugee Women in London. and they ran their own programs, and we didn't actually see any visual material for some time because there's been a lot of sensitivity around the visual material, and we've had to go through all sorts of ethics processes and forms and consent forms, which are absolutely vital. And after they'd finished with their various partner organisations, the groups moved on to join Work, Show, Grow. And that was the first time they met together. It would be really great to raise some more money to continue this because, again, not everybody, but certain members of those groups, I think, would really like to continue. The key skills that the women learned were really varied. And again, it really depended on what that organisation thought was the right thing to do. So it could be anything from really, basic but significant things about photography, like point of view, the difference that light makes, all those very basic things. But each time they were learning something like that, they would be set a small task that they would go out and do, and the next week bring it back. Now, that was particular to the group in Impressions. In Scotland, they started with a story, and they mostly kept the story that they started with, and they just started unfolding different ways of telling a story with images around the story that they'd brought to the workshops. And in London, they ran a collage workshop, a Polaroid workshop, a creative writing workshop, and all of their workshops were based around ideas of identity. And so they told their stories using poetry, creative writing, poetry, and sets of portraits, images. So it was really, each one was really, really different. For some of them, it was just an interesting thing to do for a short period of time. For others, it was a real introduction to how to use photography to tell a story. And the stories weren't necessarily simply about migration. Mm-hmm. There was a weight loss journey story, which I thought was fabulous. And there was a story about learning to drive. But all of these there's something to do with freedom as well, which I really like, and gaining a place in a society. I've always thought of photography almost partly as a therapeutic tool. So if you can't use your voice in society, you can actually take photographs and tell that story with photography. And I know there are some of them that are actually really keen to gain more skills and to continue on. One thing that I think is difficult with these kind of projects is if you give people some skills and some equipment and then it's all over. I mean, the great thing about the cameras is they got to keep them. And that means they can continue, which I think is really, really wonderful. The equipment was amazing. They got 2 or 3 lenses and a camera and something to carry it in. I was actually there. It was the one time I was there when they arrived, and the excitement on their faces to get them was incredible. And it reminded me of when I got my first camera, and I don't know, it's something really different to taking pictures on your phone. But the very key thing was the fact that they could keep them at the end of the project. And if you look around, there have been quite a lot of projects made where cameras are given to young people, to homeless people, to all sorts of different categories, if you like, of vulnerable people, and the cameras get taken away. I've been teaching in India for several years, and I was once involved with teaching a project where cameras were being given away, and then they were taken back. And one of the it was a group of children, one of the child's parents came to the design school and said, "What have you done to my child? You've given them a camera and you've taken it away. They've learnt to take pictures and now they've got nothing." I've never, ever forgotten it. I don't know how we remedied it there and then, but with this, I knew that it would be really fantastic if they could keep the cameras. And I think it'll be life-changing, not for everybody, but if it's life-changing for one person, that's really good enough, and it's an amazing thing for them. The book is going to be for sale in shops. It will also be on the publisher's website. The publisher is Trolley Books, and they have a really good international reputation. So it'll also go to art fairs and photography fairs. The book's designed by Sarah Boris, who's a really interesting emerging designer. And then we have a series of podcasts, which will all be on our fastforward.photography websites, and a series of short films about not all of the participants, but most of them. And they will also all be on our website.